Welcome to part 1 of this 8-part Blender tutorial series where I'm going to show you how to create this industrial building. Now this tutorial series is designed for more intermediate Blender users, so I'm going to be going a little bit faster than my other videos, and I'm not going to be saying every single shortcut key that I'm pressing. So if you're a complete beginner to Blender or you're very new to Blender, then this might be a little bit hard to follow and you might want to check out some of my other tutorial series, possibly my complete beginner Blender tutorial series if you're a completely new beginner to Blender. However, as long as you know kind of the basic workflows, basic shortcut keys, and some basic modeling and things like that, then you can definitely follow along with this tutorial series. I will still be doing everything in real time. So in part 1, we're going to model the first building, which has those red bricks. Then in part 2, we're going to be modeling the middle part of the building, which has those lighter bricks. Then in part 3, we're going to be joining the buildings together, and we'll also be modeling the balcony and the stairs and the railing. Then in part 4, we're going to be modeling the sidewalk, the dirt, and the road, and we'll also add a camera and set up some lighting. Then in part 5, we'll be doing the UV unwrapping, and we're going to be adding the brick materials on the buildings. Then in part 6, we're going to be sculpting the dirt beds, which have the grass, so we're going to make the dirt beds kind of popping out of it, and then we'll be using geometry nodes to place some grass on the dirt beds. Then in part 7, we're going to be adding more details, so we're going to be modeling some chairs which will be on the patio. We're also going to be adding some lights on the buildings, we'll be adding some gutters, some blinds on the windows, and then finally in the last part, in part 8, we're going to be modeling some leaves and some branches, and we'll be modeling a tree trunk, and then we'll use geometry nodes to place the leaves and the tree branches on the trunk to create those really thin long trees, and then we'll place those in the scene, and then we'll render out the scene to get the final industrial building ready. So the entire tutorial series will be completely free on my YouTube channel, and if you'd like to help support me and this channel to help me keep on creating these free videos, then a great way to do that is by purchasing the project files, and you can get that on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page with the links in the description. And if you purchase the project files, you can use the Blender file as study material or use any of the models for your projects. Another great way to help support my channel monthly is by joining my Patreon page. So if you join one of my Patreon memberships, then you'll get access to lots of Blender content and you'll be helping to support the channel each month. Now, if creating cities and buildings and these type of environments is something that you want to get better at, then I highly recommend checking out CG Boost's course, Master Urban Environments. I've reviewed the course myself and I can highly recommend it. So the course is split up into many short videos, so it's easy to follow along in the course. You can do each video in your own time. And the course covers the entire process of creating this urban environment. So the course covers the entire process, including gathering reference images, blocking out your 3D scene, modeling the buildings and modeling details, doing the lighting, doing the texturing, and the course also covers some really cool texturing techniques, like adding edge wear, adding surface details, hand painting damage onto buildings, and adding grunge and graffiti onto buildings and walls. And the course also covers some cool techniques on how to create some futuristic skyscrapers. So I can highly recommend this course if you're interested in learning how to create urban environments in Blender. So if you're interested in purchasing the course, then you can use my affiliate link in the description. And if you purchase the course through my affiliate link, then I'll earn a small commission. So that's also a great way to help support this channel. Now I'm going to be using many different resources online to create the final artwork. So we'll just go through these and I'll have all the links in the description to all the textures that I'm using. So you can download them all right now, or you can download them as you get to it in the tutorial. And all the resources that I'll be using are completely free and licensed as Creative Commons 0. So for the bark on the trees, I'm going to be downloading this bark 001 from Ambient CG. And because it's going to be pretty small and hard to see in the scene, I'll just be downloading the 1K JPEG. Then I'll also be downloading this Asphalt 04 on Polyhaven, and we'll be adding this for the concrete, and I just downloaded the 2K version. And then for the brick on the buildings, I'm going to be downloading this Bricks 030 again on Ambient CG, and because the bricks are going to be scaled pretty small and they're going to be kind of far away, I'm just going to download the 2K JPEG, but you could also download the 4K versions if you want to. And then for the sidewalk, I'll be downloading this concrete pavement. Again, this is on Polyhaven, and I'll just download the 2K resolution. Now for the grass models, I'm going to be downloading this Grass Medium 01 on Polyhaven, and I'll also just download the 2K. So these are actually some grass 3D models, and then we'll be using geometry nodes to place the grass on the dirt. And then on ambient CG, I'll also be downloading this ground 072, and this will be the dirt texture, and I'll also download the 2K JPEG version. And to get some HDRI lighting and to get a nice background behind the buildings, I'm going to be downloading this abandoned hopper terminal 04, and for this, I'm going to be downloading the 8K version because you are going to be able to see a little bit of it in the background, so I do want it to be somewhat high quality, so I'll be downloading the 8K version. You could also download the 4K version if you want to, but I'll be downloading 8K, and this is from Polyhaven. And then on pbrpx.com, I'm going to be downloading this leaf texture, and we'll be cutting out the leaves and making some branches with some leaves, and then we'll be putting them on the tree trunk. So here we are in a new scene in Blender, and I'm just going to start by selecting everything, and we'll delete everything. And the first thing that I want to do is add a little base character so that we can make sure that we're modeling everything to the same scale and the correct scale of the scene. And that'll just really help with modeling and making it look realistic. So what I'm going to do is go to Blender's preferences, and here in the search, we can search for the Rigify. You can just turn on the Rigify add-on, and that way if I go to the add menu and we can go to armature, we can go to the Rigify here, and we can add a human. So this human is about the size of a real human using the real life scale in Blender. So we can just duplicate this object and kind of move it around, and we can use this to help us with the modeling scale. Let's save the project, so I'll just save this. And I'll just save this in my project files, and I'll just save the Blender file, and then always just press Ctrl S as you're working on the project to save it. Now I want to put this character in its own collection, so I'll just hit M to move, we'll go to new collection, I'll just rename this to character and create a new collection. So now we have this main collection here, and this one I'm going to change the name to building. This is going to have all the main objects in the scene, and then we have this character collection that we can turn on and off if we want to. So let's start by making the first building. So we're just going to start by adding a cube, and we're just going to go to front view, and we're going to place it on the x-axis line. And we'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to go into wireframe, and I'm just going to box select the top here, and then we'll move it up on the z-axis so that it is 3 grids long. You can see there's the Blender grids here, so there's 1, 2, 3, and we just want to make it 3 high. Now we're going to be modeling one window here, but then I also want to mirror it over so that there's another window next to it. So I'll move this over on the x-axis. Let's also go to the face select, and we're just going to delete this face right here because we're going to be adding a mirror modifier. So now let's go to the modifiers, and we'll add a mirror modifier to mirror it over to the other side. And I just want to make sure to use the x-axis. Then I'll turn on the clipping button, and in edit mode, I'll bring this back here so it merges with the mirror. And I just want to make sure that there's 2 Blender grids here, so you can see it's 1, 2 big on this side, and then that way it's 2 Blender grids long on the other side. Now let's also go to top view, and I'll zoom in here, and in edit mode I'm just going to move it back so the front there is on the x-axis line, and then I want to make it go back by 11 grids. So I'll go to the vertex select, we'll go to wireframe, and we're just going to select the back, and we'll move it out by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 on the y-axis. Just like that, so the building is pretty long. So now right here on the very front of this, we are going to create those windows. So I will first add a loop cut, and we'll just drag this about up here. And I'll add another loop cut, and this one will drag over to about here. So the red bricks are going to be on this area here, but then the gray bricks are going to be on this part here. So we'll select this face, and we'll extrude it out. So this will be the part with the gray bricks. So now we'll add more loop cuts for the windows. So we'll add a loop cut right up here. Also one over here on this side, over here on this side, and we'll add another one here on the bottom. Now I actually want a little bit of space here on the top, so I'm actually going to hold down the Alt key, select that loop there, and just bring it down so there's a bit of a space there. So you can see right in this area, there's a bit of extra space on the top. So now let's add another loop cut. We'll put another loop cut right about here because there's going to be like a smaller window and then another small window and then 2 larger windows. So then we'll add another loop cut and we'll put this one right about there. So now we can go to the face select and we'll just select these 4 faces. We'll first inset these faces. So just inset them, make them a little bit smaller. Then we'll extrude them back, and this is where the window is actually going to be. Then we'll inset these faces again, but this time I'm going to hit the I key twice so that it insets that's the individual faces. Place that about there, and then we'll extrude it back one more time, and that's going to be the actual windows. Now if I go back to object mode, you can see sometimes it's kind of hard to see what's happening with the matte cap. So we'll go here to the settings, and we're going to turn on the cavity settings, and I'll turn the type to both, and then we can change the ridge here and the valley, and also the screen space ridge and valley. But you can see just by toggling on that cavity and using both, it really makes it easier to see the shape of the mesh, because it kind of adds like a fake ambient occlusion look, so the crevices are darker. And then I also want to add some simple materials just so that we can kind of see the different parts of the object, but we'll be doing the more detailed materials later. But for now, we're just going to add some viewport materials. So I'll go here to the materials panel, we'll add a new material. I'll just call this red bricks. And then if we close this and just open up the viewport display, I'm going to make this kind of like a brownish, orangish, reddish color, something like that. Let's add a new material, and this one we're going to call gray bricks. And we'll go into edit mode, and we'll just select that loop there, and then just select all of this part here, like that. So once that's selected, we can assign that. And then for this viewport color, I'm just going to make this like a gray color. And then let's also select the window frames. So we'll go to front view, and I'm just going to box select the frames. And we also want to select the frames that are inside the window, so select all those. We'll add a new material. We'll call this one window frames, and we'll assign that. And this we're going to leave as a white color. Then we're just going to select all the windows. We'll add one more material. Let's call this window, or you can call it glass. I'll call it windows. We will assign that. And then for this one, just to make it look a little bit different, I'm going to make it a slight blue color. Now another thing I noticed is that the frames are much too thick. So I'm going to go into wireframe. We're just going to deselect everything and just box select these vertices, and we'll scale them in a bit so it's more thin. Box select these ones here and scale them down a bit so it's more thin. So something like that is pretty good. So we'll go back into edit mode now, and I want to add an array modifier, and we're going to array it down. So we're first going to go to the face select, and we're just going to select all the faces on the bottom, because I don't want these because we're going to be adding an array modifier. So I'll delete the faces on the bottom, also delete those faces there in the middle. Let's save this project again, and then we'll go here to the modifiers, and we're going to add the array modifier. And down here on the array settings, we're going to array on the z-axis by 1. Actually, we want to do that by -1, so it's going down. And the factor x here, we want to turn that to 0. Now I want to apply this array modifier because these gray bricks here, I want to merge these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a backup of this with the mirror modifier and the array, just in case we want to go back to it for some reason. So I'll duplicate the object, but then leave it where it is. I'll hit the M key, we're going to move it to a new collection, and I'll just call this backup. We'll create the backup. So now here in the outliner, we have this backup collection, and we can uncheck it here just to hide it. So just in case, we can always go back to that object. But this object here, this object is going to be in the buildings collection. So make sure to move this to buildings collection. So now we can just apply the array. So we'll just click on the drop down and apply the array modifier. So now you can see that's actual mesh. And then we just want to make sure that there aren't any overlapping vertices. So we'll hit M, and we're going to merge by distance with all of the mesh selected. And you can see it's removed 8 vertices. So there were some vertices that were overlapping, but now those are gone. So now what we want to do is just go to the face select. We're just going to delete any of these extra faces here. So we'll delete these faces. We're also going to delete these faces here. So now we can merge the top and the bottom together. So we'll go to the vertex select. So we're just going to now select all these vertices here and fill a face. Select these vertices here and just press the F key to fill all the faces. So now you can see the gray bricks are merging with the bottom gray bricks. So now let's go to front view, and we want to move this up so it's resting on the x-axis just like that. So we'll go to front view, and we'll go into edit mode, and we'll go into wireframe, and I want to just box select the top vertices, and we want to extrude this part up by another 2 grids. So I'll extrude it, we'll bring it up on the z-axis, and bring it up by 2 blender grids there, so 1, 2. Then we'll go down here to the bottom, and we're just going to box select the bottom vertices, and we'll extrude these down on the z-axis, and we want to extrude them down by about 1 blender grid. So just like that. And then in object mode, I can move the object up again so it's resting on the x-axis there. We'll go back to solid view, and you can see there's the base for that first part of the building. And then another thing that I want to do is just go back into wireframe and edit mode, and I'm just going to box select all of these vertices here, which are making up that first window, and I want to to bring it up by about 1 blender grid. So we're going to move it up right about there, so it's 1 grid higher. But then I also want to select this part of the window here and just move it up a little bit. So we'll go to front view, we'll go to wireframe. We're just going to box select these vertices here, which are connecting or making up that first window, and we'll bring it up a bit, maybe by about 1 grid or not quite as much, so right about there. And that way there's a little bit more space in between the windows. So I now want to create a little lip on the top, which is going to be the roof. So we'll go into edit mode, let's go into wireframe, we're just going to select the top of the roof there, and we'll just extrude it up by a small amount so that we can have kind of that lip there for the top of the roof. We'll go back to solid view. Let's go to the face select, and we're just going to select that loop of faces there, and I will first extrude it out, but then after that I will scale it out, and then I'll hit Shift Z to exclude the Z axis. We'll make that a bit bigger like that. Let's go to top view now, and I can move it out on the X axis. And we just want to make sure that this part here, so the distance of this part here is about the same thickness as this part here. And that's looking pretty good. So I now want to give the top roof a new material. So we're first just going to go to the face select, and we're just going to select all the loops of faces there. And then we'll also select the top faces there. So just make sure the entire roof is selected. We'll go here to the materials. We'll add a new material, and let's call this rooftop. And we will assign that material. And then if we go to the viewport display, we're just going to make this a pretty dark color. Now, if I zoom in really close to the object is very sharp on the edges, and that's not super realistic in the real world. So we'll go to the modifiers, and we'll add a modifier. We're going to add the bevel modifier. And on the segments, let's turn this up to like a 3. And then the amount, I'll turn this to a very small number of 0.005. And let's also shade the object smooth with the object context menu. And then also the shading does look slightly weird kind of on the edges. It does look slightly weird, so to kind of flatten those faces there, what we're going to do is add the weighted normal. And now you can see that looks quite a bit better. Let's also use the object context menu, and I'm going to use the shade auto smooth instead. So you can see here it is before. You can kind of see the shading just looks slightly weird. It kind of looks a little bit smooth, but then if I add the weighted normal, it's kind of sharpening up those flat edges. Now this might be happening for you where there's this kind of weird glitch right here and shading issues. That is because if we go inside the mesh, you can see there's an extra face in here that we don't need, or there's multiple faces. So we'll go to the face select. We're just going to select those faces in the very middle there. All right, just like that. And then we'll delete those faces. So now you can see those shading issues are fixed there on the outside. So I now want to add another mirror modifier to this building so that the building is double the thickness and there's going to be more windows next to it. So again, just in case if we want to go back to this object with the mirror, I'm going to move it to the backup collection. So we'll duplicate this object, but then leave it where it is, and we'll move it. We're going to move it to the backup collection. So now here we will click on the drop down and we will apply the mirror so that the mirror modifier is applied, and that is all geometry. So then we're going to go into edit mode and we're going to move the object over on the x-axis, move it over there, and then we're going to add another mirror modifier. So we'll add modifier, we're going to add a mirror modifier, and I'm going to scroll down here on the modifier stack, and I'll drag this mirror modifier up here so it is at the very top of the modifier stack. Now we want to merge these together, so we want to merge these two together right here in the center, so we need to delete these faces. So we'll just click and drag with the box select those, and we'll delete those faces. And then right here on the lip, we want to delete those faces. And also right here, we want to select this one here and delete the faces. So now we will turn on the clipping button on the mirror modifier. We're just going to select the entire mesh. We'll go to front view and we'll move it in here, move it along the x-axis until it merges with the mirror, just like that. And if we go down here to the bottom, I want to make sure that there are 4 blender grids on this side. So it's about 4 blender grids long, and then it'll be 4 blender grids on the other side. All right, and that is it. So you can really see the base of the building is coming together. So I now want to delete these 2 windows right here on the bottom right side. And why I'm specifically wanting to delete those is because we're going to be modeling a staircase right here going to the balcony or the patio, and so I don't want the stairs to be overlapping the windows, so we're going to delete those windows. So one more time, we're going to duplicate this object, we're going to move it to the backup collection, and now we can apply the mirror modifier once more. So click on the drop down, apply this, we'll save the Blender file again. And now that the mirror modifier is applied, if we go into edit mode, it's all geometry. So we want to zoom into these windows now, and I will hold down the Alt key, select that loop there, and also Shift Alt, select that loop there. We'll just delete those faces. Then we'll use the L key with our mouse hovered over those windows to select the geometry which is connected, and we're just going to delete those faces. So now we just want to select those outer loops there. We'll press F to fill a face. And then if we select these two vertices, we'll hit J to join them, select these two vertices and J to join them. So now that's filled. And then we'll do the same thing for this window here. So select this here, we'll fill that. And then we can select these two here. We'll hit J to join. Select these two here, hit J to join. So we'll go back to object mode, I'll zoom back out here and I'll press Ctrl S to save this, and this will wrap it up for part 1 of this industrial building tutorial series. So thanks for watching, I hope you've been enjoying it so far, and I hope you've been easily able to follow along. And if you'd like to help support me and this YouTube channel to help me keep on creating these free videos, then a great way to do that is by joining one of my Patreon memberships. So if you join one of my Patreon memberships, then you'll be helping to support the channel monthly, and you'll get access to lots of Blender content. And if you'd like to purchase the project files to use as study material or to use the 3D models in your projects, you can purchase it with the links in the description on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. So I'll be uploading one part each day of the tutorial series, so when part 2 is released, it'll be right up there on the end screen, and I'll also have the link in the description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.